Hi everyone, welcome to webinar on Deep Dive into Web Development. Hope you're all doing fine this Sunday afternoon. Thank you for joining. As the guest we have with us Apurv Khare. Apurv Khare is a YouTuber and JavaScript developer who has over 6+ years of experience. He worked previously with Walmart Global Tech India. He continues to explore JavaScript and loves to continue mentor in his free time. Do check out his YouTube channel, What the Code. Hi Apur, how are you doing today?
Hey Siddhi, I'm doing good.
Thank you so much for joining us, Apur, and giving us your time to tell us about more about web development. And over to you.
Sure. I'd like to thank Cuvette to at least to give me the chance to do a webinar for your members. And yeah, so the thing is, uh, there is lots of information available on web development already available. But what I see, what lacks in especially in freshers or people who are in still college and learning web development, is they have a lot of knowledge of the framework of the, let's say, React of JavaScript and all those stuff. They can make monolithic applications and all those stuff. But when it comes to making enterprise applications, there are lots of web fundamentals that are missing. So today's session is going to be a lot more on the web fundamentals, and I hope you will be able to learn something new which you already didn't know. Okay, so with that, let me just start the session. So these are the slides. I'll share the link, or if it's already there in the YouTube, you can check that. So yeah, so let's talk about the agenda. So we'll start with what is web development. Very simple definition, nothing too fancy. What is front end? What is back end? Even though I assume all of you might be knowing it, still just a refresher. Then how did web development happen earlier? Okay, and how does the web development happen now? Then what does web development consist apart from JavaScript framework? Because JavaScript framework is just a, I mean, if it is a major, it is a major part, but the other major part is also there, which you should also know. And what does the future hold for web development? Okay, so this is the agenda for what we are going to uh, talk about in this video. So let's begin with the definition of web development. So basically, it is the work involved in developing a website for internet. Now this website can be static websites. So let's say you have a shop and you just want a online business card of your shop. So you can just create a website or have someone create a website for you. It will have just a home page, a contact page, an about page, maybe some product list page. Okay, there will be a form where they can submit any queries. Okay, this is a very simple static sort of a website. Then there are complex web applications sort of websites. Okay, so if you any website that you visit, say YouTube, say Gmail, okay, any website which is sort of an application, so it's sort of a desktop application, behaves like a desktop application, but you are able to access it in via web in the browser, then those are like sort of a web applications. So web development is the development of all such applications. Now, a website usually consists of a front end and a back end. So, front end is very simple. To what is visible to the user is the front end. Whatever interaction he does, whatever clicks he does, everything, that is the front end part. Okay. What is the back end? Back end is the server side logic. Okay, so like to basically, if you are storing something, so let's say you are currently logged in one website and you store some information, your account details, anything else, so that gets stored in the database. Okay, and then when you access that website after a couple of days in some other device, you that's available to you. How? Because it's all stored in server side, and all the logic is there at the server side. So this is the what a front end is and what a back end is. Okay, understanding what front end consists of. So if you want to become a front end developer, okay, so what do you need to know? You need to know HTML, you need to know CSS, you need to know JavaScript. Now what does a front end developer do? They implement the UI mocks that are presented to them. Okay, the interaction part, if they click, what should happen, how the user experience should behave, all that implementation is done by the front end developer. The API integration, so once you, let's say you submit a form, then the data should be going to the backend, right? So all that part, that is a part of API integration. And also there are a lot more other things. Okay, so this is a brief brief overview about the front end. Okay. Going to the backend part, this includes like if you need to learn any of the server-side language. So it could be JavaScript also works because if there's Node, you can learn Java, you can learn Go, you can learn Python, anything is fine, whichever you prefer. And then comes a database. You should know at least I would say you should at least know one SQL and one NoSQL database. So Mongo and Postgres is what I would suggest. And then comes the what do you do? So you build. There are a lot of things involved, like there's messaging, queuing, a lot of stuff, but uh, at the most basic level you build REST APIs, or if you're using GraphQL then those sort of logic will be involved. So at the most basic level you'll be building REST APIs, and apart from that there is a lot more involved, okay, but that's not what I'm going to cover today. But in brief, this is what a web development consists of. It's a front end, it's a back end. Okay, the front end deals with the front stuff that the the user sees on your website. Back end is the logic stuff. Cool. So let's understand how does a website work. So basically, you open a browser. Okay, the client enters the URL, and once he hits enter, what the browser does, it does DNS resolution. So basically, whatever the name of your website is there, corresponding to that, there has to be an IP. Okay, and that is done using the DNS resolution. Once that IP is formed, okay, once the browser knows that what's the IP of that particular uh, website, then it sends the request to the server. Okay, the server now sends the requested page to the client. Okay, so usually it's the index.html page. Okay, and then the client displays the HTML page. So now let's look at this from a very simple website. So I have a website, Hacker News. Okay, uh, and let me just do a hard refresh. And so basically what I did, I open up the dev tools. So you can just do right click inspect and then go to network. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do empty cache hard reload. So if you see now, okay, so 1 second. Yep. So basically, the first thing that is being requested, okay, that is the URL. Okay, so this is the URL that hits the server. Okay, and what the server responds with is a HTML file. Okay, most probably like always it will be first responding with the HTML file. Now what happens? The browsers is parsing the HTML file. So now as and when he starts passing the browser start passing the HTML file, he'll come and he will see that okay, is there any other resource being requested? So here if you see there's a style sheet type CSS. Okay, this is the name of it. So again it has to request that. So if you see here, this is a request for that. Okay, this is a request. Now again coming back, so that's the response. Yeah. So if you see, then there will be normal HTML like for the markup that is available on your web page. So that's the normal HTML. Then there will be some GIFs, some icons that are requested. So all those when are requested, then they will be a separate request will be there for them. And then if you see, there is this JavaScript, right? So if you see at the end, after the body, you have the script. Okay, so once the parsing HTML parsing hits the script tag, it will see okay, I have to request this. So it does the request of that. So when it does the request of that, that is the response it gets. It gets the JavaScript whatever is required. Okay. So this is how your web page gets rendered. Okay, I hope that is clear. So the server sends the HTML, the browser passes the HTML, and according to in the HTML, whatever is required, be it CSS, be it fonts, be it images, be it any sort of JavaScript file that are required, all of them are then requested for, and all of them are then fetched. Okay, so this is how a website works. Now let's move on to the next part. So what is the history? Meaning how used to like how the web development used to happen earlier, and what are the differences now. So earlier there were no clear separation between backend and front end. Okay, there was only just one code base, and all the UI and server side logic was written in the same. Okay, so what used to happen is you would have all the code, so you will do the database queries whatever is required, and then you will fit it in a some sort of a language, let's say JSP or any you use any language to create HTML. So whenever client requests a page, that page is prepared on the server side itself, and then it is sent back. Okay, so this is how it used to happen earlier. Cool. And this currently it's known as server side rendering because the HTML is created at the server side and not the client side. Okay, So this will be more clear once we go ahead what is server side rendering and what is other type of rendering. But this is how it used to happen earlier. Now what is happening currently? Okay, this has started since a decade ago, I would say. So now we have a clear separation between backend and front end. The client doesn't need to know what the server side logic looks like. Okay, what happens is that the browser, once we hit the URL, the client requests the page, the server will send the HTML page including the JavaScript that will take care of the further requests from the client. So you will have a huge bundle of JavaScript sent to you at the client side, at the browser side, and now the entire page will behave like an app. Okay, you will not even feel like you are changing pages or anything like that. The routing that will happen, the interaction that will happen, all will be taken care of by the JavaScript bundle that you received. Okay, in case if you're doing code splitting, there will be other some other requests, but mostly it will be taken care of by the client. Okay, so this is known as client side rendering. Okay, so earlier it used to happen was server side rendering. Now to help the client, help the browser behave the website as a web application, they came up with the client side rendering. Because usually what happens if you're having an server side rendered app, then all the page changes happen that will cause a refresh, and that doesn't look like a native app, right? If you use a desktop app, it doesn't reload, it doesn't give a flash of screen or anything like that. It just behaves smoothly. So similar thing happens when you have a client side rendered app. So that's why client side rendering was introduced, and now most of the applications are client side rendered. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Moving to the next slide. This is what I want to focus today. Okay, whatever I told as of now, most of you might be knowing. Okay, but what I'm going to teach now is very very important. So this is what the meat of today's talk is. So fundamentals of web development. Apart from the programming languages, the frameworks, the databases, there are other fundamentals that are required to develop a good web application. Those fundamentals are knowing what HTTP protocol is, okay, critical rendering path and how to optimize it, web storage, cookies, local storage, session storage, web performance, like how to make your web app more performant. It includes various optimization techniques, caching, compression. Then there comes web security. Okay, so there are lots of attacks happening, right? Everything is going online, so there are lots of attacks happening. So there is a cross-site scripting, CSRF, there are lots of other security that are required for you to know. So in order to prevent those sort of events. Okay, so these are some of the fundamentals. Also, you need to measure the web vital. Some of the things I have not included in the slides, but I'll speak about it. So you need to, so in order to track the performance, to measure the performance, you need to understand what are web vitals. Okay, what are the different ways to measure your website performance. So all those are something that you need to know. Okay, if you want to build a very good web application. Now we'll first talk about the HTTP protocol. So it's a client server protocol that dictates how the web client requests the page from the server and how the server sends them. Okay, the client, before even doing any request as such, any page request as such, the client first needs to establish a TCP or a SSL TLS connection with the server. Okay, that depends. If it's a HTTPS, then it will be SSL TLS. Otherwise, it will be a TCP connection. So now this HTTP connection, okay, happens. But what are the different protocols? Are like there are a lot of improvement happening in HTTP. Okay, earlier the version was 1.0. Even before that there was 0.9, but like that was not majorly used. So we'll be talking about HTTP 1.0. So it was used in early days of the web when it was very new. Then came HTTP 1.1. This is which is currently used widely. Again, if most of the website will be using HTTP 1.1, then there is HTTP 2. Okay, this is getting adapted to the modern web. Okay, lots of websites are moving on to 2.0, and then there is 3.0. Now this is suitable mostly for streaming media. Okay, so now I will even show you the examples of this. So this hacker use it uses the protocol 1.1. So if you see, all the requests of the resources are made using the protocol HTTP 1.1. Okay, coming to Stack Overflow, let me do a hard refresh. So if you see protocol here, it's H2. That means HTTP2. Okay. And if in case in your dev tools is not available, just do a right click over here and you can check the protocol. Okay, it will be available then. By default, it was not available for me. So cool. Going to the next, this is the YouTube. Okay. Here, if you, I don't need to reload, you can see here itself. See, it's using HTTP protocol, meaning HTTP3. So this way you can find out which website uses which protocol, and I have showed you one website for each of them. Okay, but I'll tell you most widely uses 1.1. 2.1 is getting adopted slowly, and then comes 3. Now, what's the difference between them? Like, why are there are 3 versions, and why are not everyone using the same version? What's the thing? So let's understand about that. Now, the limitations of HTTP 1.0 was that there are no persistent connections, meaning once the request and response is done, that connection was terminated. Again, you have to create one more TCP connection, and again, one all the handshake and everything should happen again. Okay, so that was the limitation of 1.0. But 1.1, persistent connections were introduced, and we can have now long-lived connections using the keep alive header. Okay, you can again read about more about this. So you can go to mdn.io. So that's Mozilla Firefox. In that there is an entire section on HTTP. You can learn more about it. So my aim for today's session is to just open up your brain to all these things, and you should now explore each of these things so that you can build better web applications. Okay, it's a 1 hour session, so it's not possible for me to deep dive into everything, but I'm trying to cover all the important stuffs. Okay. So going to next, which is 2.0. Now in 2.0, multiplexing was involved. Okay, meaning now you have one connection. And see what used to happen with 1.1 is like you can have at max just 6 connections. Okay, but with 2.0, it's just one connection, and then there is a concept of streams. Again, it will not make sense more if you have to read a lot on it. And then there was server sent events, header compression, prioritization, protocol negotiation. A lot of things were introduced in 2.0. Okay, and then comes 3.0. This is mostly used for streaming, as I earlier mentioned, and it uses quick instead of TCP TLS. So usually HTTP is over TCP till 1. Till 2.0 is over TCP, but quick is based on sort of UDP. Okay, so and also in streaming, mostly UDP protocols are better. So hence HTTP3 is there. It is still I'm not sure majorly used. It's very minorly used. I think YouTube is the only one that I know that uses HTTP heavily because it's a streaming website. But yeah, you should be aware of how what is HTTP3. Okay, um, cool. So these are the different versions of HTTP3 and why all of them coexist, because each of them has their own use. Okay, so next, coming on to the next slide. Here I'm going to talk about the critical rendering path. Okay, this is very important concept, and very rarely known. You should be well aware of this, because that will help you understand how your browser will parse your HTML file, and that will help you optimize the load time. Okay, so what happens is once your HTML is received by the browser, it will first create the HTML DOM. So DOM is document object model. Okay, so basically it will have, like, in the root it will have body, and then it will have divs, and it will have HTTP tags. So whatever your basically website consists of, that DOM is created of with all the tags. Okay, then the next step is creating the CSS OM, meaning uh, CSS object model. So you might be aware of DOM, but you might not be aware of OM. So this is also there. So with all the CSS that is present, there's another tree is created. Okay. Now what happens? Both of these are combined, and the render tree is created. So let's say if there is something which is, let's say, display none. Okay, so that will not be part of the render tree. That particular element will not be part of render tree. So the render tree is like the combination of HTML and CSS, and whatever is to be shown in the web page will be part of the render tree. Okay, then comes the layout meaning based on where your website is getting rendered, based on it's this phone, or it's a tablet, or it's a laptop, or it's a huge screen. Based on that, where what should be placed, which item should be placed where, that is get calculated over here in the layout section. Okay, and then comes finally the paint section, where your web page is painted. Okay, so these are the different uh, parts of critical rendering path. So this, in a way, you might be thinking it's simple, but thing is it's complicated as to optimize it. Okay, because thing is, if you have anything, let's say you are having an HTML file. Okay, so here what they did. Okay, here the JavaScript file was at the end. Okay, after the body, but usually some might keep in between. So if anytime the HTML sees a script tag, it will start first downloading it. Okay, and then executing it. Now there are different ways to prevent this. So there is async and there is differ. Okay, we'll be talking about this in the optimization part. But the point is, once the HTML sees the script tag, it will stop parsing. Okay, it will block the rendering. So the entire critical rendering path is now blocked until the script is downloaded and executed. Okay, same goes. Let's say if you in CSS you are downloading any font using some external fonts. So again, same thing will happen. It has to wait for that font to be fetched, and then only it will continue. So anything that is blocking your rendering path needs to be optimized. Okay, and we'll be talking about that in the next slide. That how can you optimize your rendering path. So you have to optimize the render blocking assets. How? So let's say first let me explain what is about the fold. So basically whenever you load any website, whatever is visible to you, that's known as above the fold. Okay, and rest of the thing is when you scroll, that's below the fold. So you have to preload all the images, fonts, and everything that are being used in your above the fold. Okay, so in that case, that will be download parallelly. Okay, so always preload all any static assets like images and fonts which are above the fold. Okay, then defer any non-critical JavaScript and CSS. Okay, so let's say you will have lots of CSS in your website, but some of them is not required for the first page, so let's just defer it. Okay, and in JavaScript, let's say there is some JavaScript for analytics purpose. Okay, so again that is not required for your rendering of your web page, so you can defer them. Okay, so there are two tags basically. One is async and one is defer that can be added with the script. So there are basically attributes to the script tag. Okay, so what async does is that it will download the what is it JavaScript parallelly, but once downloaded, it will start executing. And what defer does, again, it downloads it in parallel. Okay, but it will not even execute it. It will wait till the HTML is done parsing the entire HTML, and then only it will execute it. So these are the some of the differences, okay, between async and defer, and these are very important attributes which will help you optimize your critical rendering path. Okay, so if you optimize your critical rendering path, that will automatically optimize your loading time. Okay, so and also to measure all this you require the web fundamentals. Okay, not actually web vitals. So you require so there are three core web vitals as such, which is largest contentful paint, then there is the first input delay, and there is cumulative layout shift. These are the three main ones. If you want to read more about this, I would suggest you to go to web.dev. Okay, very simple website, web.dev, and that you can learn all about the different web vitals. Okay, but these are the core web vitals, and you can measure them. You can use page speed insights, or you can even have even in our tools there are available. Lighthouse is available. You can generate report. Okay, so this is how you will measure. Okay, and to improve, these are some of the improvements you can do. Okay, but this optimization is for the critical rendering part. There are other optimizations also you can do, which I'll talk about in the coming slides. So now I'll talk about web storage. So earlier there were only cookies. There was no local storage. There was no session storage. So and it still cookie exists, but earlier there was only cookies. So what happens is when whatever HTTP response we get from the server, okay, that decides what information is to be stored in the cookies. Okay, you can even access it using document dot, and you can do it in the client side itself. But usually the server sets has a set cookie header, and it sends whatever the server wants as part of the cookie. And thing is, whatever is stored in the cookie will be sent in each request in HTTP request. So whatever HTTP request is sent to the server, whatever is set in the cookie will be sent in each request. Okay. So this you can even consider as a drawback, because with every request, maybe some unnecessary data is going on. So why do we need cookie? So let's say you want to store let's say some information about the user. Okay, some sort of ID to uniquely identify him. Okay, you want to store his card details and all those stuff. Okay, you can use cookies, but again you need to choose. You don't need to make it heavy, because with every request all those cookies will be sent to the server. Okay, so what are the other ways to store? Local storage and session storage. So first let's talk about session storage. So it maintains a separate storage area for each given origin that's available for the duration of the page. So for each website, for each session, there's a different storage area, and it is available as long as the browser is open, including page reloads and restores. Okay, so once the browser is closed, once the tab is closed, it will be lost, but till then it will be available. So that's known as session storage. Now local storage does the exact same thing, but persists even when the browser is closed and reopened. Okay, so accordingly, based on your need, you can choose to store your user data either in cookies or in session or in local storage. Okay, and again I have given link over here. So Wherever is your blue text, it's a link. So you can use the click that link, and you can be redirected to more information about it. Okay, whatever slide I'm talking about. Now, let's go to the next slide, which is the first load optimization. So as I told you, right, there are lots of optimizations. What I talked about earlier was for just for critical running path. Now, what is first load? First load meaning the user has never visited your website; he's visiting for the first time. Okay, so here what you can do is you can use resource hints. Again, I have given a link over here. You can read more about it using this link. So, what are the various resource hints? One is DNS prefetch. Okay, meaning you know that the what is a server resource, which are the APIs. So you can pre-resolve the DNS resolution, and that can happen if you use DNS prefetch. Okay, then comes pre-connect. So pre-connect is little ahead of DNS prefetch, meaning it will not just do DNS resolution; it will maintain a TCP connection. Okay, with that particular domain. Let's say you're going forward, you know that you have to access some resources from a particular domain. Then you can use pre-connect, so that it's before that happens, before the when the request hits, the TCP connection is already established, so you save that much time. Okay, then comes prefetch. Now prefetch is usually like, let's say you're in currently in one page. Let's say I am in sort of a product PDP, product description page. So now I know that I've added into cart, so now mostly I'm going to go to next checkout. So what you can do, you can prefetch that. Okay, so prefetch will basically fetch the next resource, the resources required for the next page. It would be HTML, CSS, JavaScript, anything that is required for the next page. Okay, it's still just prefetch. Then comes pre-render. What is pre-render? This is like ahead of prefetch. It will not just fetch, it will even execute. So it will start passing the HTML and all those stuff. Okay, so this will all help in your first load. So what are the different resources I told? DNS prefetch. Okay, this is like the basic. Then comes pre-connect, then comes prefetch, and then comes pre-render. I even talked about that in an order. Okay, so how they would help. Now definitely deep dive into this, and try to understand which type of resource do you want to use when. Okay, then comes, this is very simple, minifying JavaScript and CSS file. So obviously, if you're transferring anything over the net, then as lesser the KBs, better it is. So you can minify the JavaScript and CSS file. Optimize the images. So basically, the images, dealing with images is a very huge problem. Okay, especially if you have a site like an e-commerce or something like that, which is dependent a lot on images. So what you should do is optimize them. Meaning, let's say if someone is loading it in a laptop, then give them a little good higher, you can provide a higher resolution and higher size of the image. But if someone is using over the phone, and also not just phone and laptop, also based on the network they have. Okay, like someone is using 2G 3G, then accordingly you need to optimize the image and send them. And you can even explore formats of images which are highly optimized, like in least number of size, it gives you the best quality. So WebP is one of those formats, so you can use that. Okay, so focus on the image optimization if your website is image heavy. Okay, then deploy the static assets over CDN. So images or anything like that which is static assets, deploy over CDN. What are CDN? So basically it's content delivery network. So it's very simple, content delivery network. So what happens, usually our entire business logic is there on the server. So whenever someone hits a request, there are lots of logic going on. But if it is just static assets, just some text or just some image that has to be sent, then you can make use of CDNs, which are very fast. Okay, so you can put all your static assets over the CDN. Okay, then comes code splitting. So again, let's say you have a very huge JavaScript file. Okay, now but current page does not require 80% of the JavaScript file. So what you can do, you can split your code. So if someone is at the home page, then send some JavaScript file. If someone is at the contact page, then some send at that time when they request, that time only send the contact page related JavaScript file. So like that you can split your code. Okay, so these are some of the optimizations you can do for the first load. Okay, so go to the next slide. For the optimizations, now these are for after, like this is not first load, the user has already visited a website. Now what you can do, so basically there's just one important thing, which is caching. So cache the static assets. Okay, use appropriate caching policies. Okay, so you can choose your caching policy based on the cache control header. Okay, so there are different properties for cache control. Again, I have given a link, you can explore about it in depth. So there are options like no store. No store means never cache anything. Okay, no cache meaning before giving the cached instance to the, let's say I hit contact. Okay, let's say contact page of a website. So what happens is the server will tell you, okay, don't just give whatever you have cached in your browser. First check with me if anything is changed and then only give. Okay, so that's no cache. Then there's private, public. Okay, private meaning specific to the browser, so that will be cached at your browser. Public mean that will be cached at your let's say if you have some so basically public cache meaning that sort of assets are common to lots of different users, and a private cache meaning that is applicable to only specific user. So that's how you can partition that. Okay, and then there is must revalidate, and there are lots of other options. All of those options you can check using the this website that I've given. Okay, you can explore more, and accordingly you can add cache control policies in your HTTP request. Okay, actually it will be response, HTTP response, so that your assets are cached accordingly, and the further visits of your user becomes a very snappy experience. Okay, so we already optimized the first load experience, and then you should optimize the second load and the nth load experience. Okay, and again, if you usually see, then you might have seen like remove cache. Okay, all those stuff. So when you remove cache and all those stuff, everything is loaded from scratch. Okay, so that's how you should make sure. Okay, that you should also always optimize the first load also, and then further loads also. Okay, cool. I hope that is clear. Okay, going to the next slide. So here I'll talk a bit about web security. Okay, so and again I have given a link. You can use that link. Okay, um, so first I'll talk about cross-site scripting. So basically, let's say you have an input. Okay, and that is not sanitizing. So in your code, you're not sanitizing the input. Meaning, user can enter a script tag. Okay, let's just let's learn and then script and then type let's say alert or something. Okay, any sort of script that you can inject. Okay, and then your browser just processes, your code just processes it. It doesn't know that there's some malicious content in that. So at that time, lots of attacks can happen in your website. Now how to prevent this? Sanitize all your inputs. Okay, so there are parsers available, HTML parser, and if you're using React, so JSX by default anyways sanitizes your inputs. Okay, so either use the built-in features of the frameworks, or you can use any sort of parsers that are available. There are lots of HTML parsers available, and you can use any one of them. Okay, then comes cross-site request forgery. So basically someone is impersonating another site and then making a request on your behalf. Okay, again, to prevent that, there are CSRF tokens. So you can learn more about that. Okay, for to prevent XSS, there are various things, but one of the most important thing is content security policy. So basically you are saying that if there is any script to be executed, just execute it from self. Okay, if there is a image that is being requested, request only from this particular domain. Okay, so that's what you can set in content security policy, and that will help you prevent XSS attacks. For CSRF, you can use CSRF tokens. Okay, then enforce HTTPS. Okay, so basically in HTTPS there is a SSL TLS collection. You have a certificate from the certificate authority, so you know how you're visiting a genuine website. Okay, so try to enforce HTTPS connections only over your website. um, then comes referrer policy. So basically, let's say if you're here, okay, if you're this is my website, if I click over here and it opens another website, so basically I referred. So basically I from my website you went to some other website. So again with that there are some security risks that you can tackle using the referrer policy. Okay, now these are some of the security issues and how you can fix it, but you should make sure about the OWASP top 10. So basically OWASP top 10 are the security issues which are found during a survey, okay, with a lot of companies. Okay, so this survey happens like every couple of years. So last it happened in 2017 and currently it happened in 2021. So based on the survey, they find out top 10 attacks. Okay, top 10 attacks, and then you can learn about how to prevent them. Okay, so this is a very important resource. Okay, you can visit this. All the 10 security issues are available over here. Okay, and you can again try to see if your website is vulnerable to any of the security attacks, and accordingly you can prevent them. Okay, not all of these will be available to sorry applicable to your website. Some of them might be. Whichever is applicable to you, just try to prevent those. Okay. So that was about your web security. Okay. Um, Going next, rendering design patterns. Okay. Now this is something that most of you might be aware of. Till now, whatever I talked, maybe you are aware of, maybe not aware. But this I understand because these are very hot terms as of now: client side rendering, server side rendering, static site generation, incremental site regeneration. Okay. For this also, I have given a very good resource over here. You can visit that. Okay. So let's talk about each of them. So basically, what is client side rendering? So I already talked about it, but let me talk about it again. So client side rendering meaning, once your the user visits your website, almost the entire JavaScript is sent at one go. Okay, you can even code split, but yeah, most of the JavaScript is sent. And now your app will behave like a uh, sorry, now your website will behave like an app. Okay, it will be very smooth experience. Okay, there will be no request going back and forth. There will be no refreshes. Okay, there will be no, even if you change routes, there will not feel like you're changing routes. Okay, so to give like a native desktop experience, you can use client side rendering. Then comes the server side rendering. Okay, sorry. Then comes the server side rendering. So basically, again, as I mentioned earlier, but thing is, why would you want to do server side rendering? Like, what advantage does it give? So with server side rendering, what happens is your first contentful pane and your time to interactivity. These are two of the vitals, okay, which help you measure your performance, becomes almost same. Okay, now let me help you understand what that means. So what happens in server side rendering, your website is rendered at the server. So meaning your HTML, CSS, everything is there. Now what happens is the browser receives it, and all it has to do is hydrate. What do I mean by hydrate? Meaning it has to attach the event listers and all those stuff, right? All the JavaScript the code mapping has to happen at your browser's side, right? That cannot happen at the server side. So or adding the event listers and all those stuff, that is what is known as hydration. So that has to happen. So thing is with this, the app, the first load will be little delayed because the rendering happens at the server. But once you receive the HTML, the first contentful pane will be fast, very fast. So you'll be able to see everything at fraction of seconds. Okay, and also just since just only hydration is remaining, the interactivity also will be fast. So once your page is rendered, once you start clicking, all the responding from the clicks and all those stuff will be also fast. Okay, so this is what server side rendering helps you with. Okay, with client side rendered, what happens is you will see the pane first, but thing is, uh, once it receives, it has to what do you say, parse the JavaScript file to show you the rest of the content. Okay, so with client side rendering, the loading, initial loading will take a little time once, but you will be able to see the first paint very fast. Okay, but first contentful paint and all those other metrics, largest contentful paint or all those stuff, that will be more optimized if you do server side rendering. Okay, again, you can learn more about this over here. Okay, client side rendering and server side rendering and all this stuff. Then comes static site generation. So basically, during the build time, so during at your server side, before even anyone requests your pages, any pages which are sort of static, which does not depend on dynamic data, so those can be already pre-built, pre-built at your server side. Okay, and also if you want, if you wish, you can deploy them to a CDN. Okay, so what happens is when the user requests, there is no rendering happen at server side. Also, it will directly respond with that static asset. Okay, so it will be even more fast. It will be like your FCP and TTI will be almost same. In server side rendering, it will be still a bit different, but in static side generation, it will be almost same. Okay, so that's another way of doing static site generation. But thing is, if anything changes, the entire site has to be built again. Okay, so that's the drawback of static site generation, and that solves the next thing, which is incremental static regeneration. Okay, ISR. Okay, so again, like here, whichever module request that is built and sent to you. Okay, and which is not requested, that is not part of the build. Okay, so this is again, you need to read more about it, so you can go and you can understand over here. Okay, what is this and what are the differences between these. um, but these are the various ways you can use in your single app. So earlier, what used to happen, only server side rendering, then came client side rendering only. But now people are understanding that in your app there can be different requirements for different parts of your app. So it is better to use a mix of all of these depending on the requirements. Okay, so that's what my last slide is about. Okay, so that's about the future of the web. Okay, now there are advantages to have a website server side rendered, to have a website client side rendered, to have a part of the same website client side and server side rendered. Okay, some of them are static, completely static. You can do static site generation. Okay, so the future of the web is to use a mix of all of those and then create a website, so that will give you the most optimal uh, performance. So usage of frameworks which support CSR, SSR, ISR, SSG, like Next.js, Remix.js to some extent. It does not support SSG, but yeah, otherwise it does support SSR. So basically, frameworks like these can be a good choice if you want to make a good web application in the future or in the present. Okay, but what you also need to understand, that while learning the new technologies, while learning the future of the web, it is very important for you to understand the fundamentals of web development, because otherwise you will just keep learning but you will not know what you're improving on. But why do we need CSR, why do we need SSR, like what happened is that we are moving to this combination. We should know what are the reasons, because otherwise you might learn all the new tech, you might be pro at Next.js, but when it comes to web fundamentals, web platform, you might make some mistakes. Okay, so I leave you one with one very important note, which is that do not ignore the past and present of web development while focusing on the future of web development. Okay, you need to have a good understanding of the core web fundamentals in order to become a good developer, because if you just keep on developing monster app and full stack app and all those stuff without knowing the web platform, yeah, it maybe help you in getting the job, but once you're in the job, once you keep growing, if you want to grow into senior engineers or architect or all those stuff, this all these knowledge is very very important. Because thing is, when you join a company, you are told, okay, this is the thing that you need to code, just code it out. That's what you do. You are not involved in all those decisions of how to do architect the app. Okay, and if you want to know, if you want to keep your career growing in the uh, web development, then you need to know all this stuff. Okay, so yeah, so from my side, this is all about it. The slides are available at this link, and if you guys have any doubts or anything you need to ask me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Okay, in the first slide itself, I have uh, shared my bio link, so you can reach here. You can check my Discord server, my YouTube, LinkedIn, anything. You can uh, ping me anytime. Okay, yeah, and yeah, that's it about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Apurv, for a very informative session. There was a lot of engagement in the comments, and we definitely have some questions to look at. I'll start with the first question, and the first question says, what are REST APIs?
Okay, cool. Um, so basically, REST APIs are basically, let's say, it's a standard, okay, to get the data from your server side. So there are some methods. I'll explain very brief. I'll not go into depth. So let's say there are some, not let's say, there are actually some methods which are get, post, put, delete. Let's focus on these four. Okay. So you need to access resources from your server, or you need to send resources from your server. This is decided by these methods. Okay, let's say if you want to get resources from your let's say you are visiting your website for the first time, so you want to get resources. So at that time you will use a get request. Okay, with get request you can even pass parameters in, you can pass as parameters in your URL itself. Okay, so that will help you get the resources. But now you, let's say you're in already in your website and you are now adding some data. Let's say you're filling a form or something like that. Okay, so at that time you are sharing some resources to the server. At that time, what you can use post request. Okay, so at that time you, along with the headers, okay, you'll be adding a body, and that body will be sent to the server. So that is a post request. Then comes put meaning if you want to just update something. Okay, at that time you can use put request. If you want to delete anything, then you can use the delete request. So these are some of the standard ways of doing uh, mm, basic communication with the server, and that's what REST API is all about.
All right, moving on to our next question. What could be good back end projects?
Okay, good backend packets, projects. Yeah, so I would say try to make full stack applications. Okay, even though you might be only interested in one of the part, maybe front end or maybe front end, back end. But try to make a full stack application so that you know what are the pain points faced by the other side. Okay, so you can actually optimize your own side. So let's say if you want to make a backend project, I would say try with e-commerce application. Okay, just which will have a product listing page, you will have a product detail page, and then you will have a checkout and all those stuff. Okay, this might seem simple because currently lots of people just make it like in couple of hours, but try to make it on your own without using any tutorial. Okay, but you can obviously make use of Google Stack Overflow and all those things, but try to make it on your own. And with backend, there's one thing that I find nice is that you don't need UI mockups, because for frontend you just stuck at, okay, I don't know how to make the mockups and stuff. So but backend, you just need to come up with good API design, okay, which is very very important. So how are you going to send the response? So like in what format are you going to send the response? How are you going to optimize it? Okay, there are lots of stuff in backend. So projects, to come to your question, I would say e-commerce application you try to make. So for full stack, I'll also say make a Gmail sort of application, like a web client. Okay, so for that also you can make a backend. Okay, so try to do something different also. Like e-commerce is the most basic thing, then you can try to do something different, like a Gmail client. Okay, and like any email client you can use, or sort of a social media application. I mean, it will mostly rely on WebSockets, so you can even explore WebSockets. Okay, then try to make some sort of backend project with processes data, meaning you got the user is trying to generate some report. Okay, and there are lots of concurrent requests happening. So how will you manage that? How will you queue that? Okay, all that is very important. Scaling your servers and all those stuff. So any sort of application which requests download of resources. Okay, you need to generate any report as such. So all those sort of application you can try to build.
All right. Okay, the next question that we have is where to study web development.
Uh, that's actually if you want to, the very blunt answer would be just start googling. Okay, whatever you want to learn, because resources available everywhere. Okay, but if you are asking me, I would suggest I have a guide. Okay, so you can, because I have prepared it. I know this question is very famous. Everyone asks a lot, but not. So you can use this. Okay, this guide. I have shared all the resources that are required to learn anything. Okay, most of them are free resources, so you can use it. Okay, and you can use even my website, meaning my YouTube. So this is also available in, if you go over my bio link, this is available over there, so you can check it out.
All right. I think that was the last question. Apurv, do
Great.
you mind sharing that link with me in the
Yep.
private chat or somewhere? I'll share
Sure.
it with the audience right now only.
Sure. Sure. Anything related to web development, anyone wants to teach resources or anything, just go over this site. Everything is available over here. Okay, well, I'll also share this. One second. Mm,
Right.
I have sent it to the private chat.
Yes. So, for everyone here, we have shared the full detail about where to study web development from in the live chat. Access it. And if you're not able to access it here, it's also available on Apurv's bio link. So, do not worry. We have one more question, and that's from Anjali. And Anjali asked, so where can I practice real front end interview questions, implementations, and conceptual?
So for conceptual knowledge, you can go to web.dev, okay, which is like the best website to learn. It is by Google, okay, so you can trust their content. So for that you can do. For yeah, front end questions, there is no such repository as such. But thing is, what I do, let's say in my Discord, what I do, I have a specific channel for it. So I post any sort of questions that are there, interesting question that I come up with or I encounter anywhere. I put it in there, and then the people in my Discord, they try to solve it, and then after some time I'll tell them what is the correct answer and all this stuff. So you can try to join as groups which does these things, which we deal with front end questions and all those stuff. And yeah, nowadays lots of creators also put it on YouTube, so lots of questions are available over there, so you can use YouTube. Even I'm going to do a lot of front end interview questions in coming month. Okay, so you can even check out my channel. But the thing is, only just read the question and try to implement it by your own self. Don't see the solution. Then if you're not able to do it, or if you're able to do it, just come back and see if they did it differently, or if you're stuck or something. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Great. I think that ends our Q&A. If anyone has any last minute questions, do let us know. We'll be taking them. And till we wait for 2 minutes, I have one last question for you. I want to know that you've given us so many advices right now about how to go and actually grow in the web development field. But what is the one advice you would like everyone to take with them as we end this session?
One advice that I would say is always keep learning. Okay. Because thing is, lots of people reach out to me, they say like, what should I do so that I'll get a job? Like, what's the minimum that I should do so that I'll get a job? If that's the approach, you might get the job, but you will not stay a lot for long. Okay, so be curious and keep learning. Okay, and follow your passion as such. Okay, if you're doing it just for the sake of money, then it's fine, do it, no issues, but follow some other passion that you want. Okay, because if you're just doing web development for the sake of money, at some time you will burn out. You will think like, oh, there's too much required, and it's not made for me or anything like that. So follow your passion. Like, try to learn in whatever you're interested in, but always keep learning. There is never going to be like that. Okay, I learned for like parents used to say like 10th निकाल दे हो गया, 12th निकाल दे हो गया, college कर दे हो गया. That हो गया never happens. Okay, so you should always keep on learning, and not just from seniors, from juniors also. Actually, I see a lot of content creators who are like 15 years old, and or like between 50 to 20, who create a lot of good content. Okay, and they have a lot of good knowledge. Okay, so you can learn even from your juniors, you can learn from your seniors. Okay, just keep that learning mindset open.
Well, that's some really good advice, Apurv. Thank you so much for joining us today, and for a very fun-filled session. Thank you to the audience for staying with us till the very end and asking some really good questions. Stay tuned for more such sessions on the Discord community and YouTube channel. We'll meet you until next time. Signing off.